Airline manager Snubs Black CEO's handshake. Minutes later, he grounds a $50 empire. You can put your hand down. I don't shake apes.
I've seen the numbers,
The
Frank.
words
They're
hit
a
harder than any
disaster.
slap could.
That's not possible.
For a second,
I checked them
the
myself.
whole boardroom froze. No air, no motion. Just disbelief dressed in silence. The man who said it, Richard Halden, senior manager of the Airline Consortium, stood stiff at the head
The
of the
anomaly
table.
originated here.
His
in
tie
the
was
offshore
perfect, his
accounts.
face
The
unbothered
transfers
like
are
he'd
masked,
just
but
commented
the
on the
timeline
weather.
matches perfectly with
Across
the
from him,
internal
Malcolm
security breach.
Reed,
The
tall,
future we
dark suit,
envision
calm
is not
eyes,
just a dream.
didn't move his hand.
It is a
It
meticulously
hovered there,
crafted plan,
suspended in
a
the charged
roadmap
air
to
between them.
unprecedented growth.
A simple gesture turned into a public execution of respect. Behind them, the giant LED screen glowed blue with a profit curve climbing like a skyscraper. $50 billion in pending funding. A deal months in the making. Dozens of executives watching, none daring to breathe. Malcolm slowly lowered his hand. Not because he was humiliated, but because he was calculating. The room didn't know it yet, but that quiet moment was the beginning of a collapse. Halden smirked. "Let's get back to business," he said, straightening his jacket. He thought he'd just put a man in his place. He had no idea he'd just buried his own career. Malcolm's voice, when it came, was low, steady, surgical.
I've seen the numbers,
Business,
Frank.
he
They're a
echoed.
disaster. That's
Right.
not possible. I checked them myself.
He turned his gaze to the projection on the wall, the chart of growth, of expansion, of everything this room believed they owned. What
The
they
anomaly
didn't
originated
know
here in the offshore accounts.
was that the
transfers are
money
masked,
behind
but the
that
timeline matches
chart,
perfectly
the
with internal
investors,
security
the
breach.
approvals,
The
the
future we
board
envision
votes,
is not just a dream.
all
It is a
answered to
meticulously
him.
crafted plan, a roadmap to
Someone
unprecedented
coughed.
growth.
A pen rolled off the table. The sound echoed like a trigger. Halden chuckled, filling the silence. "Come on, Malcolm, don't take it personal. We joke
I've
around
seen the
here."
numbers, Frank. They're a disaster.
Malcolm looked
That's
at
not
him.
possible. I checked
"You
them
think that
myself.
was a joke?" Halden shrugged. "If you can't handle banter, maybe you're not fit for this level of play." And there it was,
The
invented
anomaly
the
originated here
arrogance,
in the
sharp
offshore
and
accounts. The
casual,
transfers are masked,
decades
but the
old.
timeline matches perfectly with the internal
You could
security
feel
breach.
the interns
future
at the
we envision
back
is not
shifting
just a dream.
uncomfortably,
It is a meticulously crafted
eyes
plan,
darting
a
between
roadmap
them,
to
unsure
unprecedented
which
growth.
side to align with. The tension wasn't just racial. It was structural. The hierarchy of who gets to define professionalism and who's forced to endure it. Before we
I've seen the numbers,
continue,
Frank. They're a disaster. That's
where
not
are you
possible.
watching
I checked them
from?
myself.
Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories
The
spark
anomaly
change,
originated here in the
and we're
offshore
glad
accounts.
you're
The
here.
transfers are masked,
Now
but the
back to
timeline matches
Malcolm. He
perfectly with the
didn't
internal
sit.
security breach.
He
The
didn't
future we
raise his
envision is not
voice.
just a dream.
He
It is a
simply
meticulously
adjusted
crafted
his
plan.
cufflinks, glanced at the frozen chart behind Halden, and said quietly, "You just lost $50 billion. The sentence
I've
landed
seen
like
the numbers,
thunder
Frank.
wrapped in
They're a
velvet.
disaster.
No
That's
one
not
understood,
possible.
not yet.
I checked them myself.
But Halden blinked, his confidence cracking just slightly, like the first hairline fracture before a glass wall gives way. Malcolm turned to the board. "In a few minutes, you'll understand why
The
respect
anomaly
isn't a
originated
courtesy,"
here in the
he
offshore
said.
accounts.
"It's
the transfers
collateral.
are masked, but
The
the
lights
timeline
flickered
matches
once, like
perfectly
the
with
building
the internal
itself knew
security
something was
breach.
shifting.
The future we
And as he
envision is
walked
not
toward the
just a
window
dream.
overlooking the
It is a
skyline, the sound of his
meticulously
shoes,
crafted plan,
deliberate,
a roadmap
calm,
to
certain,
unprecedented growth.
carried the weight of empires built from endurance. This wasn't revenge. It was accounting. The silence didn't fade, and it deepened. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the faint buzz from the LED screen still glowing with false triumph. No one dared to move.
I've seen the numbers,
Not
Frank.
the
They're
analysts.
a disaster.
Not the
That's not
consultants.
possible. I
Even
checked
the
them
intern
myself.
at the end of the table had stopped breathing. Malcolm didn't rush. He adjusted his watch, eyes scanning the table like a quiet storm reading its next target. Halden forced a laugh, brittle and echoing against the
The
polished
anomaly
walls.
originated here in
You're
the
kidding,
offshore
right?
accounts. The
What,
transfers
you
are
pulling out a
masked,
bluff?
but the timeline
Malcolm
matches
didn't
perfectly
answer.
with the internal
He
security
didn't
breach.
need to.
The future
He'd
we
spent 20
envision
years
is
in
not
rooms
just a
like this,
dream.
rooms that
It
loved
is a
his ideas but
meticulously
hated his
crafted
presence.
plan, a
Rooms that
roadmap
praised
to
diversity in press
unprecedented growth.
releases but recoiled from it in person. And every single one of those rooms had built him, layer by layer, slight by slight, until patience became his sharpest weapon. He remembered his first deal, 26 years old, wearing a rented suit, pitching to a man who called him
I've seen the
son and
numbers,
asked if he
Frank.
could
They're a
handle real
disaster.
money.
That's
He
not
handled it.
possible. I
Built an
checked them
empire
myself.
from it. Now that same empire sat beneath this very boardroom, silent, watching, waiting for his cue. Halden leaned forward, voice rising to fill the unease. "Look, let's not get sentimental.
The anomaly originated
You're a consultant.
here in the offshore
You don't
accounts.
run the show
The transfers are masked, but
Malcolm
the timeline
finally
matches
turned, his
perfectly
voice
with the
measured.
internal security breach.
Is that what you
The
think?"
future we envision is
One of the
not
board
just a
members,
dream.
Clara Jensen,
It is a
a
meticulously
woman in her
crafted
60s with
plan,
glasses
a
perched low,
roadmap
spoke for
to
the first time.
unprecedented growth.
"Richard, maybe you should let him explain." Halden shot her a glare. He's wasting our time. We've got investors to impress. Malcolm smiled slightly. You already did. He walked toward the far wall, tapping the corner of the screen with 2 fingers. Every dollar you're bragging
I've seen
about,
the
he
numbers,
said quietly,
Frank. They're a
was
disaster.
secured under Reed
That's
Equity
not possible.
Holdings.
I checked them
The
myself.
room blinked. The name registered like a delayed explosion. Clara straightened. Reed Equity? Malcolm nodded once. My company. My capital. My terms. Halden's smirk cracked.
The anomaly
You
originated
can't be
here
serious.
in the offshore
Malcolm's
accounts.
eyes didn't
the
leave the
transfers
chart
are masked, but the
completely.
timeline matches perfectly
And as
with
of
the
this
internal
morning, that
security
funding
breach.
is suspended
The future
pending
we
review.
envision is not just a dream.
A ripple of
It is a
murmurs broke the
meticulously
stillness.
crafted plan.
The sound of
A
power
roadmap
shifting
to
hands.
unprecedented growth.
Someone from the far end whispered, "He owns the fund?" Another voice, shaky. That's impossible." Malcolm turned back, finally facing them. "Impossible is what you call justice when it doesn't wear your reflection." Clara exhaled softly, half in awe, half in relief.
I've seen the numbers,
Halden's
Frank.
face
They're a
reddened,
disaster.
veins tight against
That's
his
not
collar.
possible.
"You
I
think
checked
you
them
can
myself.
embarrass me in front of my team?" Malcolm tilted his head. "I think you did that all by yourself." He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a razor whisper. "You looked at me and saw a man out of place.
The anomaly
But
originated
you forgot
here
something.
in the
The
offshore
table you're
accounts.
standing behind.
The transfers are masked,
It's leased under
but the
my name.
timeline matches perfectly
floor
with the
beneath
internal
it,
security breach.
Paid for by my
The
fund."
future we envision
Halden's
is
breath
not just a
faltered.
dream.
The rest of the
It is
board
a
stared,
meticulously crafted
not because they
plan.
pitied him,
A
but
roadmap
because they
to
were witnessing
unprecedented
gravity
growth.
reverse in real time. Before we move on, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in quiet power, the kind that doesn't shout but shifts entire empires, hit like and subscribe. Now back to Malcolm. He walked to his
I've
seat,
seen the
calm,
numbers, Frank.
deliberate.
They're a disaster.
No anger, no gloating.
That's not possible.
Just inevitability.
I checked them myself.
His assistant's voice buzzed softly through his earpiece. "Sir, confirmation received. Funding lock engaged." He replied. "Good, let them sweat." Across the table, Halden's hands
The
trembled
anomaly
as he
originated
reached for his
here
glass
in
of
the
water.
offshore accounts.
It wasn't the
the transfers
liquid
are
that
masked,
shook,
but the
it was his
timeline matches
certainty.
perfectly with the internal
He
security
built his
breach.
confidence
The
on the
future
belief
we
that
envision
power
is
came
not
from
just a
position.
dream. It is a
Malcolm had just
meticulously
proven it
crafted
came from
plan.
ownership.
A roadmap
The
to
screen behind them
unprecedented
flickered again, the
growth.
graph beginning to drop, red slicing through blue like a wound. And in that moment, the entire boardroom understood. The insult wasn't the story. The story was the silence that followed, and the man who weaponized it. Halden's hand tightened around the glass until his knuckles
I've
blanched
seen the
white.
numbers, Frank. They're a
He
disaster.
didn't drink.
That's not
He
possible.
just stared at the
I checked them
condensation
myself.
forming on the rim, the slow, humiliating reminder that he'd lost control of the room. Malcolm didn't say another word. He didn't have to. The energy had shifted, gravity rewritten. Every set of
The
eyes, and
anomaly
from the
originated
analysts
here
to the
in the
partners,
offshore accounts.
now measured
the
him
transfers
differently.
are masked, but the timeline matches
Respect,
perfectly
once
with the internal
withheld, began
security
creeping
breach.
back into the
The
air.
future we envision
Hesitant but
is not
visible.
just a dream.
Holden
It is a
finally slammed the glass
meticulously
down.
crafted plan.
"You can't
A
just walk
roadmap
in here
to
and pull this stunt," he
unprecedented
barked.
growth.
Malcolm looked up, calm as ever. "Stunt? No accountability," Halden scoffed. "You think waving your wallet gives you moral authority?" Malcolm leaned back slightly, voice soft but cutting. "No. Integrity does. The money just enforces it." The
I've
words
seen
hung
the
like
numbers,
smoke,
Frank. They're a
clean,
disaster.
deliberate,
That's
undeniable.
not possible.
Clara,
I
still
checked them
watching,
myself.
adjusted her glasses and murmured, "Richard, maybe it's time you listened instead of defended." He shot her a glare, then turned back to Malcolm. "You people always play the victim card." That was it.
Yeah.
The
The
sentence
anomaly
that made the
originated
room
here
colder.
in the offshore accounts.
Malcolm stood,
The transfers are masked,
slow,
but the timeline
deliberate.
matches perfectly with the internal
The
security
motion felt
breach.
like thunder
The
rolling
future
beneath
we
marble.
envision is
He
not
walked
just a
around the
dream.
table,
It is a
every step
meticulously
echoing in the
crafted
chamber
plan.
built for
A
arrogance.
roadmap
He
to
stopped beside
unprecedented
Halden.
growth.
"Victim?" Malcolm repeated. His tone was so calm that it scared everyone more than shouting could. "Let me show you what victims don't do." He gestured toward the screen. The data shifted again, the growth curve flattening, the numbers dipping live as automated alerts triggered.
I've seen the numbers,
A
Frank.
quiet
They're a
gasp
disaster.
rippled through the room.
That's not possible.
Halden's
I checked
confidence
them
cracked
myself.
audibly. "What did you do?" Malcolm replied. "Paused every cent of future investment into this division. Effective immediately." "You can't," Halden started, voice trembling. "I can,"
The anomaly
Malcolm
originated
interrupted,
here in
"because
the
I
offshore
built the
accounts.
structure you
The
worked under.
transfers are masked,
And
but
I'm
the
not
timeline
shutting it
matches
down.
perfectly with
I'm
the
cleaning
internal
it."
security breach.
Behind them,
The
one of the
future we
younger
envision
analysts
is not
whispered
just
to
a
another.
dream. It is a
"He really owns
meticulously
everything?"
crafted plan.
The other nodded
A
faintly,
roadmap
awe
to
mixing with fear.
unprecedented growth.
They'd seen power before, but never like this. Patient, restrained, and surgical. Halden turned desperate. "You'll bankrupt the company." Malcolm's expression didn't change. Companies recover. Character doesn't. For a brief second, no one moved. Even
I've
the
seen
lights
numbers,
seemed
Frank.
frozen.
They're a disaster.
Then Clara spoke
That's not
quietly, her
possible.
voice shaking.
I checked them myself.
He's right. Halden glared at her, but her eyes didn't flinch. We built this culture on exclusion and ego. Maybe it's time someone rewrote the policy. A murmur of agreement followed. Low but
The anomaly
growing like
originated
thunder in
here,
distant
in the
hills.
offshore accounts.
Halden
The
looked
transfers are
around,
masked,
realizing the
but
boardroom
timeline
he'd once
matches
commanded
perfectly
no
with the
longer
internal security
recognized his
breach.
authority.
The future we
Malcolm
envision
checked
is
his
not just a
watch.
dream.
You've
It is
got
a
10 minutes to call
meticulously
HR,
crafted
he said,
plan,
and step down
a
quietly.
roadmap to
Do that,
unprecedented growth.
and your reputation might still have a pulse. Halden's jaw locked. And if I don't? Malcolm looked him dead in the eye. Then I'll show you how fast legacy burns when it's built on arrogance. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below.
I've seen the numbers, Frank.
And if
They're
you believe
a disaster.
dignity is power,
That's not
not
possible.
volume,
I checked
hit
them
like,
myself.
share, and subscribe. Now back to Malcolm. Halden sank slowly into his chair, the sound of leather stretching beneath defeat. He looked smaller now, like the suit he wore no longer fit the man inside it. Meanwhile,
The
Malcolm
anomaly
returned to his
originated
place
here,
at the
in the
table,
offshore
calm,
accounts.
unshaken.
The transfers
He
are
pressed his
masked,
thumb
but the
to his
timeline
tablet.
matches perfectly with
One
the internal
quiet
security
command.
breach.
The future
Outside the
we
boardroom,
envision is not just a
The digital
dream.
display in the
It is a
lobby updated
meticulously
instantly.
crafted plan,
Read
a
Equity
roadmap
Holdings,
to
assuming
unprecedented
temporary
growth.
control of global operations. The receptionist gasped. Phones buzzed. And somewhere far above the skyline, an empire silently changed hands. Malcolm didn't smile. He just whispered more to himself than anyone else. Justice doesn't announce itself.
I've seen the
It
numbers,
simply
Frank.
arrives.
They're a disaster.
Outside, the
That's
city
not
pulsed
possible.
beneath the
I
glass,
checked them myself.
cranes, towers, and the heartbeat of commerce. Inside, the boardroom felt colder than marble. The air carried a tension that even the walls seemed afraid to echo. Malcolm remained standing. He
The
didn't need the
anomaly
chair
originated
anymore.
here, in the
The
offshore
power had
accounts.
already
The
shifted its
transfers are
allegiance.
masked, but the timeline
Across from
matches
him, Richard
perfectly with
Halden
the
sat
internal
frozen,
security breach.
eyes
The
flicking
future
toward
we
the screen
envision
that
is
now
not
glowed
just
with
a
his
dream.
failure.
It is a
Temporary
meticulously
control,
crafted plan,
he muttered under
a
his breath,
roadmap to
reading the
unprecedented
announcement
growth.
on the lobby ticker. Malcolm's tone was quiet but final. Permanent if you keep talking. Halden rose halfway, anger bleeding into desperation. You can't just erase me from my own board. Malcolm's gaze didn't waver. I didn't erase you, Richard. You erased yourself the
I've
moment
seen
you
the
mistook
numbers, Frank.
tolerance
They're
for
a
weakness.
disaster.
The
That's
rest
not
of the table
possible.
stayed
I checked
silent.
them myself.
Executives who'd once laughed at Halden's jokes now looked anywhere but at him. Power was contagious, but so was humiliation. Clara Jensen folded her hands. Malcolm, she said softly, what
The
happens
anomaly
next?
originated here,
Malcolm
in the
turned
offshore
to her.
accounts. The
The
transfers
faintest
are
trace of
masked,
humanity
but
in
the
his
timeline matches
eyes.
perfectly with the internal security
Accountability.
breach.
The
Quietly,
future we envision
thoroughly.
is not just a dream.
He walked toward the
It is
end
a
of the room,
meticulously
stopping beside the
crafted
floor-to-ceiling
plan,
window.
a roadmap to
Every quarter, this
unprecedented
company
growth.
bragged about ethics, he said. You printed it on your brochures, put it in your investor decks. But the truth is, he turned back, meeting each pair of eyes. You've been operating on borrowed respect. And respect, like any asset, comes due. Halden barked out a bitter laugh.
I've
You
seen
talk
the
like
numbers,
a preacher.
Frank. They're a
Malcolm's
disaster.
lips curved
That's
faintly.
not possible.
Preachers
I
ask
checked
for
them
faith.
myself.
I ask for proof. He tapped his tablet. A sound pinged through the room. A soft chime from every executive's phone. Clara glanced down first. Her email screen read, Notice of Audit.
The anomaly
Behavioral
originated
Conduct
here,
Review.
in the offshore accounts.
Immediate compliance
the transfers
required.
are masked, but the timeline
Halden's
matches
phone
perfectly with
buzzed,
the internal
too.
security breach.
His
The
face
future
drained
we
of color.
envision is not just
You
a
wouldn't.
dream. It
I
is a
already did,
meticulously
Malcolm
crafted
said.
plan,
Someone
a
near the
roadmap
back
to
whispered,
unprecedented
He's
growth.
rewriting corporate protocol. Another voice replied, He's rewriting history. Halden lunged forward, slamming both palms on the table. This is tyranny. Malcolm looked up slowly. No, Richard. Tyranny is thinking you could insult the hand that funds your paycheck and call it confidence.
I've seen the numbers,
The
Frank.
words hit
They're a
harder
disaster.
than any gavel.
That's not possible.
No one
I
defended
checked them
Halden now.
myself.
Even the young intern, still silent in the corner, stared at Malcolm like watching justice materialize in real time. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or
The
country in the
anomaly
comments
originated
below.
here, in the offshore
And if you
accounts.
believe power
The
should never
transfers
come
are
at the
masked,
cost of
but
dignity,
the timeline matches
hit
perfectly
like
with the
and
internal
subscribe.
security breach.
These stories
The
spark
future we
change.
envision is not
Now
just
back
a
to
dream.
Malcolm. He
It is a
stepped closer to
meticulously
Halden.
crafted plan,
Do you know why
a
you really
roadmap
hate
to
me?
unprecedented
He asked.
growth.
Halden didn't respond. Because I'm everything this company pretended to value. Intelligence, discipline, vision, but wrapped in a color you can't control. Silence. The kind that exposes character, Halden finally looked up, voice trembling.
I've seen the numbers,
What are you
Frank.
going to
They're
do
a
to me?
disaster. That's
Malcolm
not
leaned
possible.
in, his tone
I
even
checked them
colder
myself.
now. Nothing. You'll do it to yourself. Because every person in this room will remember what they saw today. And next quarter, when your name disappears from the reports, they'll call it restructuring. But we'll both know what it really
The
was.
anomaly originated here.
He turned
in the
toward the
offshore
exit,
accounts.
one
The
hand on the
transfers are
polished
masked,
steel
but the
door.
timeline matches perfectly with the
Respect
internal
isn't
security
granted by
breach.
title, he
The
said.
future we envision
It's earned
is
by
not
how
just
you
a
treat
dream.
those you think you can
It is
overlook.
a meticulously crafted
The door
plan,
opened with a hiss of
a
air
roadmap
pressure.
to
Malcolm
unprecedented
stepped
growth.
out, leaving behind a room full of people who had just watched their hierarchy collapse in silence. As the door closed, the reflection of the city light shimmered across the glass wall, refracting into 1,000 fractured images, a reminder that power, once divided, never
I've seen the
returns the
numbers,
same.
Frank. They're a disaster.
The hallway outside
That's
the
not
boardroom
possible.
felt wider
I
than
checked
it
them
was,
myself.
a corridor of glass and whispers. Malcolm's footsteps echoed softly across the polished floor, steady as a metronome. Behind him, the meeting he'd just detonated was still unraveling in hushed disbelief.
The anomaly
A few steps
originated
away,
here,
his
in the
assistant
offshore
Tessa
accounts.
Monroe
The
stood
transfers
waiting,
are masked,
tablet
but the
in
timeline
hand,
matches
earpiece
perfectly with the
blinking
internal
green.
security breach.
Everything
The
went
future we
through, she
envision
said.
is not just a
Audit
dream.
notices confirmed.
It is a meticulously
Fund access
crafted
restricted.
plan, a
HR's
roadmap
already
to
requesting
unprecedented
statements.
growth.
Malcolm nodded once. Good, let them document their own culture. He kept walking. The corridor opened into a panoramic view of the skyline. The same skyline built by people who never expected him to stand this high. For a moment he stopped, watching the reflection of the city flicker across the glass.
I've seen the numbers,
He didn't
Frank. They're
smile.
a disaster.
He rarely
That's
did
not
when
possible.
justice was
I
involved.
checked them myself.
Inside the boardroom, chaos was beginning to bloom. Through the glass, he could see Halden gesturing wildly, voice raised, his authority unraveling thread by thread. Clara sat still, listening. Others were already on their
anomaly
phones,
originated
whispering
here,
to
in
legal
the
teams,
offshore
reputations
accounts.
flickering
The
like
transfers are
unstable
masked, but the
lights.
timeline matches
Malcolm
perfectly
turned
with the internal
slightly,
security
speaking into
breach.
his
The
earpiece.
future we envision
Tessa,
is not just a dream.
make sure the media
It is
freeze
a
stays in place.
meticulously crafted
No
plan,
leaks yet.
a
Yes, sir,
roadmap
she
to
replied.
unprecedented
But corporate
growth.
communications is panicking. They're asking what to tell investors. He paused. Tell them the truth. For once, she hesitated. The whole truth? Malcolm glanced back toward the glass where Halden's reflection was still pacing like a trapped shadow. The truth doesn't need editing, he
I've
said.
seen the numbers, Frank.
Just
They're
witnesses.
a disaster.
Down
That's
the
not
hallway, a
possible.
janitor
I
pushing a
checked them
supply
myself.
cart slowed as Malcolm passed. The man, Latino, mid-40s, weary but alert, nodded slightly. Rough day, sir? He asked quietly. Malcolm stopped. Necessary day.
The anomaly
janitor
originated
smiled
here,
faintly.
in the offshore accounts.
They don't like
The
necessary.
transfers are masked,
Malcolm
but the
returned the
timeline
nod.
matches perfectly
No,
with the
but they
internal
learn
security
from it.
breach.
It wasn't
The future we
condescension, and
envision
it was
is not just a
recognition.
dream.
Two
It
men
is a
in different
meticulously
uniforms who
crafted
understood
plan,
the same
a
fight.
roadmap to
A sudden alert
unprecedented
buzzed
growth.
across Tessa's tablet. Sir, security reports movement in the lobby. Some staff are leaving early, including Halden's team. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Leaving or running? Running, she admitted. He exhaled slowly. Then the message landed. Before
I've
we
seen the
continue,
numbers,
where
Frank.
are you
They're
watching
a disaster.
from? Drop
That's
your
not
city or
possible.
country in
I
the
checked them
comments below.
myself.
And if you believe silence can be stronger than shouting, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind the world that dignity is never negotiable. Now back to Malcolm. He returned to the boardroom door, not to
The
re-enter
anomaly
in,
originated
but to
here,
watch.
in the offshore accounts.
Through the tinted glass, the
transfers are
hierarchy
masked,
that
but the
once
timeline
dismissed him
matches
was
perfectly with
splintering.
the internal security
Halden slammed a
breach.
folder on the
future
table.
we envision is
Clara
not just
remained
a dream.
unmoved.
It is
You
a
could almost read her
meticulously
lips.
crafted plan,
He warned
a
you.
roadmap to unprecedented
Tessa's voice
growth.
returned through the earpiece. Press team is waiting for your statement. Malcolm shook his head. No statements, no spin. Let the footage speak, she blinked. Footage? He turned toward her. There are cameras in every corner of that room. Compliance footage,
I've seen the
timestamp.
numbers,
I
Frank.
own the
They're
building,
a disaster.
remember?
That's
Realization
not possible.
washed across
I
her
checked them
face.
myself.
You planned this. I prepared for it, he corrected. The insult wasn't surprising, the exposure was overdue. Inside, Halden's posture collapsed into something unrecognizable. Not
The
anger,
anomaly originated here,
fatigue.
in the offshore accounts.
A man
The
finally
transfers are
understanding the
masked,
cost
but the
of
timeline
unchecked
matches
arrogance.
perfectly with the internal
Malcolm's
security
reflection
breach.
merged
The
with the
future we
skyline
envision
behind
is
him.
not just a dream.
One man,
It is
countless
a
windows.
meticulously crafted
One
plan,
story
a
repeating through
roadmap to
generations.
unprecedented growth.
Different rooms, same prejudice. Different era, same silence broken by composure. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. They'll rewrite this tomorrow. Call it overreaction. Call it restructuring. But the truth won't fade. It's in the footage. and in
I've
every
seen the
person who
numbers,
watched.
Frank. They're a
Tessa
disaster.
looked up at him.
That's not
So
possible.
what happens now?
I checked them myself.
Malcolm turned from the glass, his voice calm, resolute. Now, he said, we let the witnesses remember what justice looks like when it doesn't need an audience. He walked away. No applause, no headlines, just the
The
echo of
anomaly
measured
originated
footsteps.
here, in the offshore
And in the room
accounts.
behind him,
The transfers
the
are
sound of
masked,
power
but the
collapsing
timeline
under the
matches
weight of its
perfectly
own
with the internal
reflection.
security breach.
Inside the
future we
boardroom,
envision is not
chaos
just a
finally
dream.
found its voice.
It is a
Richard
meticulously
Halden's words
crafted
were no
plan,
longer
a
coherent
roadmap
sentences,
to
just
unprecedented
fragments
growth.
of ego cracking under pressure. Illegal. Overreach. He can't. The large screen behind him flickered again, now displaying a global feed. Partners, investors, media panels debating the Malcolm Reed incident.
I've seen the
A
numbers,
host on
Frank.
one
They're
channel
a
said,
disaster.
the man
That's
they
not
dismissed
possible.
as a
I checked
consultant
them myself.
turned out to be the funder. It's not just poetic, it's precedent. Tessa watched the broadcast, then looked at Malcolm. They're calling for interviews, even the morning shows.
The anomaly originated
smiled
here,
without
in the
amusement.
offshore accounts. The transfers
Tell
are
them the
masked,
story
but the
isn't
timeline
about
matches
me.
perfectly with the internal
It's about what
security
happens
breach.
when
The
respect is
future we
undervalued.
envision is not just a dream.
Clara
It
exhaled
is a
slowly.
meticulously crafted
You know,
plan.
You didn't
a
have to
roadmap
expose them like that.
unprecedented growth.
You could have done it behind closed doors. I could have, he said. But then the next Halden would think silence was safety. I wanted him to see what accountability looks like. Public, documented, irreversible. Clara studied him for a long moment.
I've seen
You
the
really
numbers,
planned
Frank.
this.
They're a disaster.
Not
That's
the
not
insult,
possible.
Malcolm
I checked
said.
them myself.
Just the outcome. The room fell quiet. Outside, the city gleamed with the muted light of morning. Glass towers reflecting a sky still clearing from yesterday's
The
storm.
anomaly originated here, in
Malcolm
the offshore
stood,
accounts.
walking to the
The
window.
transfers are masked, but the
You spend
timeline
your whole
matches
life
perfectly
being
with the internal
underestimated, he
security
said.
breach.
You learn to
The future we
weaponize
envision
patience.
is not just a dream.
He turned back
It is a
toward them,
meticulously
his
crafted
tone
plan,
calm but
a
final.
roadmap to unprecedented
Release the
growth.
full footage. Every second. Let them see what respect looks like when it finally answers back. Tessa hesitated. That'll ruin them. Malcolm's gaze was steady. No, it'll educate them. As she pressed send,
I've seen the numbers,
the
Frank. They're a
servers hummed
disaster.
alive.
That's not possible.
Within
I checked
minutes,
them
the video
myself.
spread across every major outlet. The insult, the silence, the reveal, the reversal. The world was watching a man who never raised his voice but redefined power with one
The
sentence.
anomaly originated here,
Respect
in the
isn't a
offshore
courtesy.
accounts. The
It's
transfers
collateral.
are masked, but the timeline
And as the
matches
clip
perfectly
reached
with the internal
millions, the
security
city didn't
breach.
just talk.
The future we
It
envision
listened.
is not just a dream.
By noon, the
It is a
footage had reached
meticulously
every corner of the
crafted plan,
digital world.
a roadmap
It
to
looped on every
unprecedented
major
growth.
news network, dissected by anchors, analysts, and self-appointed moral philosophers. Clips flooded social media. The handshake refusal, Malcolm's calm response, the single line that detonated the illusion of control. You just lost
I've seen
$50
the
billion.
numbers, Frank. They're a disaster.
In coffee
That's not
shops,
possible.
strangers
I
debated.
checked them myself.
In offices, employees replayed it quietly behind spreadsheets. In classrooms, students called it the moment the mask fell off corporate America. At Reed Equity's headquarters, the elevators hummed with
The
whispers.
anomaly originated here, in the
Some
offshore
employees
accounts.
looked proud.
The transfers are masked,
Others
but
looked
the timeline
terrified.
matches perfectly with the internal
Because for the
security
first time, the
breach.
world
The
wasn't just
future we
watching their
envision
company's
is not just
success.
a dream.
It was
It is a
watching its
meticulously
conscience.
crafted plan, a roadmap
Tessa
to
stepped into Malcolm's
unprecedented
office
growth.
with a dozen notifications still lighting her screen. Sir, the consortium's shares dipped 6% this morning, but sentiment's turning. Investors are calling you a stabilizing force. Malcolm didn't look up from his desk. Stability isn't silence. It's
I've
structure.
seen the numbers, Frank. They're a
She nodded,
disaster.
then
That's
hesitated.
not possible. I checked
There's
them
more.
myself.
Halden just gave an interview. He looked up slowly. Of course he did. She read from her tablet. He called it a personal vendetta disguised as reform. Says he was
The anomaly
ambushed in front of the
originated here,
board.
in the offshore accounts.
Malcolm's
the transfers
tone
are
didn't
masked,
waver.
but the timeline matches
And
perfectly
did he
with the internal
apologize?
security breach.
The
Tessa shook
future
her
we
head.
envision is not just a
No,
dream.
he said he was
It
provoked.
is a meticulously crafted
Malcolm leaned
plan,
back.
a roadmap
Arrogance
to
never
unprecedented
retires.
growth.
It just looks for a microphone. Outside, the storm was already changing shape. News hosts now spoke of systemic bias, ethical leadership, representation in boardrooms. Malcolm's silence had become a thesis on dignity. Before we continue, Where
I've
are
seen
you
the
watching
numbers,
from?
Frank. They're a
Drop
disaster.
your city or country
That's
in
not
the comments
possible.
below.
I checked them
And if you
myself.
believe change doesn't need noise, just courage, hit like and subscribe. These stories exist to prove quiet power still moves mountains. Now back to Malcolm. The office door opened
The
again.
anomaly originated here
Clara
in the
Jensen
offshore
stepped
accounts.
in, holding a
the transfers
printed
are
memo.
masked, but the timeline matches
They've scheduled an
perfectly with the
emergency
internal
board
security
meeting,
breach.
she said.
The future we envision
Investors
is
want
not just a dream.
to restructure
It is a
leadership and
meticulously
reinstate you
crafted
as
plan,
permanent chairman.
a roadmap
Malcolm
to
smiled slightly.
unprecedented growth.
Titles never impressed me, Clara. I know, she said, but maybe they'll listen when one of their own holds the title. He looked out at the skyline, cranes, glass, the motion of a city that thrived on short memories. Do you think they'll change? He asked quietly.
I've seen the numbers, Frank. They're
Clara
a disaster.
followed his gaze.
That's not possible.
Some will.
I checked them myself.
The rest will wait until change becomes profitable. He nodded. Then we make integrity profitable. Downstairs, the lobby was filling with reporters. Flashes popped against the marble.
The anomaly originated
Microphones
here
waved
in the
like
offshore
antennae
accounts.
searching for
The
truth.
transfers are masked,
Security
but the
held the
timeline matches
line, but
perfectly
even
with the
they
internal
looked
security
conflicted,
breach.
half
The future
protective,
we envision
half
is
curious.
not just a dream.
One
It is a
journalist shouted a
meticulously
question
crafted
toward the
plan,
glass walls.
a roadmap to
Mister,
unprecedented
Reed,
growth.
is it true you planned the exposure to humiliate your colleague? Malcolm stopped mid-step, turning toward the cameras. He didn't speak loudly, but the microphones caught every word. I didn't expose a colleague, he said. I exposed a culture. The crowd fell silent for a moment.
I've seen the numbers,
A silence
Frank.
more
They're a
powerful than
disaster.
applause.
That's not possible.
Upstairs,
I checked them myself.
Tessa watched the live feed, goosebumps rising on her arms. That line, she whispered. That's going to live forever. Clara nodded beside her. It should.
The anomaly originated here in
Malcolm
the offshore
continued
accounts.
walking
the
through the
transfers
lobby.
Are masked, but the
No
timeline
entourage,
matches
no
perfectly with
podium,
the
just
internal
presence.
security breach.
Every
The
eye
future we
followed him,
envision is not just
because
a
of
dream.
spectacle,
It is a
but because of
meticulously
gravity.
crafted plan,
He had become
a
something
roadmap to
rarer than
unprecedented
powerful,
growth.
undeniable. As he stepped into the waiting car, the cameras kept flashing, but his face remained calm, almost unreadable. He looked through the tinted glass at the crowd outside, people arguing, filming, analyzing. Then, almost
I've
imperceptibly,
seen the numbers, Frank.
he whispered
They're a
to himself,
disaster. That's not possible.
"This isn't about
I checked them
exposure.
myself.
It's about memory." The car pulled away, and the reflection of the building slid across the window, a monument to silence reclaimed and a reminder that sometimes revolution
The
doesn't
anomaly
roar.
originated here in the offshore
It simply
accounts.
refuses
the
to bow.
transfers are masked, but the timeline matches
The next
perfectly
day,
with
the city
internal
woke up to
security
headlines
breach.
that felt
The
more like
future we
verdicts than
envision
news.
is not just a dream.
The
It is a
$50 billion
meticulously
lesson.
crafted plan, a
He didn't
roadmap
raise his
to
voice.
unprecedented
He
growth.
raised the standard. Malcolm Reed redefines corporate justice. The footage had crossed oceans overnight. European markets were discussing governance reforms. Universities were quoting his words. Even politicians were pretending they'd always believed the same things he just
I've
proved.
seen the numbers, Frank. They're a
But
disaster.
Malcolm didn't watch any
That's
of it.
not possible.
He was
I checked
back in
them
his
myself.
office, surrounded by quiet. The kind of quiet you earn, not inherit. Tessa entered, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You haven't slept," she said softly. "I wasn't
The
trying
anomaly
to,"
originated
Malcolm
here
replied.
in the offshore accounts.
"Rest
the
is for
transfers
recovery.
Are masked, but the timeline
I'm still
matches
repairing."
perfectly with the internal
She
security
placed the
breach.
coffee beside
The
him.
future we envision is
Repairing
not just
what?
a dream.
The
It
company's
is a
already turning
meticulously
you into a
crafted
legend.
plan, a roadmap
He
to
looked out at the
unprecedented
skyline,
growth.
dawn catching on the mirrored towers. Reputation is borrowed. Culture has to be rebuilt. The elevator chimed behind them. Clara Jensen stepped out, holding a file thick with papers. "Ethics Review, Phase 1, she said. "We traced every report
I've
hauled
seen
and
the
buried
numbers,
in the
Frank.
past
They're a
5 years.
disaster.
Some are ugly."
That's not possible.
Malcolm
I checked them
nodded
myself.
slowly. "Good. The rot needs air before it heals." They sat together, scanning names, dates, testimonies, patterns of subtle exclusion and professional
The
dismissal
anomaly
wrapped in
originated
corporate
here
language.
in the offshore accounts.
It
The
wasn't
transfers
just
are
hauled
masked,
in.
but the timeline
It was
matches
a system
perfectly with the
designed to
internal
look
security
polished while
breach.
staying
The future
poisonous.
we envision is not just a
Clara
dream.
sighed.
It is a
"You
meticulously
know, it's easier to
crafted
fire
plan,
people than to
a
teach them."
roadmap to unprecedented
Malcolm's
growth.
tone was calm. "We're not teaching them. We're reminding them of what humanity looks like when you strip away hierarchy." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe that leadership without empathy is
I've
failure
seen
in
the numbers,
disguise,
Frank. They're a
hit
disaster.
like and subscribe.
That's not possible.
These stories
I
aren't
checked them
about
myself.
revenge. They're about restoration. Now back to Malcolm. The intercom buzzed. "Sir, media's in the lobby again," the receptionist said. He
The
smiled
anomaly
faintly.
originated here in
"Let
the
them
offshore
film the
accounts.
silence.
The
It's the most
transfers are
honest
masked,
statement
but the
we have."
timeline matches perfectly with
Tessa
the internal
frowned.
security breach.
"But the
future we
shareholders'
envision
meeting is
not
tomorrow.
just a dream.
They'll
It
expect
is
you
a
to make a
meticulously
speech."
crafted plan.
Malcolm
A
nodded.
roadmap to
"I'll speak,
unprecedented growth.
but not about victory, about responsibility." He stood, straightened his jacket, and looked between the two women who'd stayed through the storm. "Clara, you'll oversee the audit department permanently. No more loyalty to managers. Loyalty only to truth." She blinked,
I've seen the numbers,
surprised.
Frank. They're a
"You're serious?"
disaster.
"Completely.
That's not possible.
You were
I
the
checked them
first to say
myself.
he's right. That's leadership." Then he turned to Tessa. "And you, call the foundation. I want a new scholarship announced. For every young professional who's been told they don't fit the image."
The anomaly originated
expression
here in
softened.
the offshore accounts.
"Under your
the
name?"
transfers are masked, but the
He shook his
timeline
head.
matches perfectly with
"Under
the internal
theirs.
security breach.
Let the next
future we
generation build
envision
their
is
own
not
empire
just a dream.
quietly."
It is a meticulously
The phone
crafted
buzzed again.
plan.
A private
roadmap
line.
to unprecedented
He picked it up.
growth.
The voice on the other end was hesitant. "Mr. Reed, this is Richard Halden." The room stilled. Malcolm didn't respond immediately, just listened. Halden's voice was smaller now, stripped of bravado. "I wanted
I've
to
seen
say
the numbers, Frank. They're a
I
disaster.
was wrong.
That's not possible.
Not about the money.
I checked them myself.
About you." Malcolm let a few seconds pass before answering. "You weren't wrong about me, Richard. You were wrong about what matters." Halden didn't reply. The line clicked
The
dead.
anomaly originated here
Tessa
in the
looked at him
offshore
carefully.
accounts. The transfers are
"You
masked,
forgive him?"
but the timeline matches perfectly
Malcolm
with the
exhaled
internal
slowly.
security breach.
Forgiveness
the future we
isn't the
envision
point.
is not just a dream.
Accountability is.
It is a meticulously
He looked down
crafted
at the city
plan.
again.
A roadmap
Buses
to
moving, glass
unprecedented
shining, the
growth.
hum of life continuing. "This place runs on transactions," he said quietly. "But respect isn't one of them. It's the currency no one budgets for, until they go bankrupt." As the sun broke through the clouds, light spilled across the office floor. Sharp, clean,
I've
new.
seen the numbers, Frank.
For
They're
the
a
first time, the
disaster.
reflection in the
That's
glass
not
wasn't
possible.
divided
I
between
checked them
power and
myself.
pain. It was whole. And Malcolm, the man who never shouted, finally allowed himself to breathe. Not in
The
relief,
anomaly
but in
originated
restoration.
here in the offshore accounts.
The
transfers are
shareholders'
masked,
meeting
but the
began under the
timeline
kind
matches
of pressure
perfectly with the
only
internal
truth
security
can
breach.
create.
The future we envision
Rows of
is not
investors,
just a dream.
directors, and
It is a
executives filled the
meticulously
conference hall,
crafted plan.
faces set
A
in
roadmap
practice
to
neutrality.
unprecedented growth.
They'd seen the footage. They'd read the headlines. Now they wanted to see the man who'd turned corporate humiliation into a masterclass in restraint. Malcolm entered without a security escort. No entourage, no theatrics. Just quiet composure in a black suit that looked like it belonged to history more than fashion.
I've seen the numbers,
When he stepped
Frank.
onto
They're
the
a
stage, the room
disaster.
hushed.
That's not
Not
possible.
from obligation,
I
but
checked
from
them myself.
gravity. He didn't stand behind the podium. He walked past it. "I'm not here to defend what happened," he began, voice steady, amplified, but calm. "I'm here to define what it meant." The screens behind him
The
flickered to
anomaly
life.
originated here
Stills
in the
from the
offshore
footage.
accounts.
The
transfers
handshake
are masked,
refused.
but the
The
timeline
smirk.
matches
The
perfectly with the
silence.
internal
The
security breach.
reveal.
The future we
He
envision
turned
is
slightly
not
toward
just
the
a
images.
dream. It is
This,
a
he said, wasn't a
meticulously
scandal.
crafted plan.
It was a
A
mirror.
roadmap to
Murmurs rippled
unprecedented
across the
growth.
crowd. He continued, "You can't reform what you won't acknowledge." And what we saw in that boardroom wasn't an isolated event. It was a symptom. He let the silence linger, long enough to make them feel it. "Power without humility," he said,
I've seen
"is
the
just
numbers,
noise
Frank.
with a
They're
budget."
disaster.
A few heads lowered.
That's not possible.
Some
I
nodded
checked them
slowly.
myself.
Even those who had privately defended Halden were now silent, not out of guilt but realization. Clara sat near the front row, watching. Her pen hovered above her notepad, but she wasn't taking
The anomaly
notes.
originated here
She
in
was
the
bearing
offshore
witness.
accounts. The transfers
Malcolm
are
moved
masked,
closer
but
to
the
the edge of the
timeline matches
stage.
perfectly with the
"When you
internal
dismissed the
security
man you
breach.
saw that
The
day," he
future we
said,
envision is
"you
not
weren't
just
just
a dream.
underestimating me.
It is a
You were
meticulously
undervaluing
crafted
everyone
plan.
who doesn't
A
fit your script
roadmap
of
to
success."
unprecedented
He
growth.
paused, then smiled faintly. That ends today. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe leadership means lifting, not limiting, hit like and subscribe. These stories honor the dignity we're still fighting for. Now back to Malcolm.
I've
He
seen the
looked over
numbers,
the crowd
Frank. They're a
again.
disaster.
"Here's what changes,"
That's
he
not
said.
possible. I checked them
1.
myself.
All hiring panels will be audited for bias, reviewed by external counsel. 2. Every division head signs a code of equity. Violate it, lose your seat. 3. This company will invest $50
The
million
anomaly
annually
originated
in minority
here, in the
leadership
offshore
programs.
accounts. The transfers
The
are
room
masked,
erupted,
but the timeline
not
matches
in
perfectly
applause,
with
but
the
in
internal
surprise.
security breach.
The
Someone
future
stood
we
up.
envision is not
That's
just a dream.
radical.
It is a
Malcolm met
meticulously
his
crafted
gaze.
plan.
No,
A roadmap
that's overdue.
to unprecedented growth.
Another voice called from the back, skeptical. And what about shareholders who think this is performative? Malcolm's eyes didn't blink. Performance ends when consequences begin. The air changed again, that same density from the first confrontation, but reversed.
I've seen the
Now
numbers,
it wasn't
Frank.
disbelief.
They're a
It
disaster.
was conviction.
That's not possible.
He stepped
I
back
checked
toward the
them
podium
myself.
at last, resting one hand on it. I've been asked 100 times why I didn't shout. Why I didn't fight back louder, he said. His tone softened. Because shouting is what they expect. Silence
The
unsettles
anomaly
them.
originated here,
A faint
in the
smile
offshore
crossed
accounts.
his face, the kind
transfers
that
are
held
masked,
both
but the
triumph and
timeline matches
exhaustion.
perfectly with
I
the
didn't
internal
need to raise my
security breach.
voice, he said.
The future we
I
envision
just needed
is
to
not
raise the
just a
standard.
dream.
The
It is a
crowd rose
meticulously
slowly,
crafted plan.
applause
A
breaking through the
roadmap
weight
to
of what they'd heard.
unprecedented growth.
Not explosive, but deliberate, like respect rediscovered. Clara wiped her glasses, whispering to herself, "That's the line they'll quote for decades." As the applause grew, Malcolm stepped away from the stage lights, walking down the aisle,
I've seen
not
the
as a
numbers,
symbol,
Frank. They're a disaster.
not as a savior,
That's not
but as
possible.
proof
I
outside
checked them
cameras
myself.
waited. Inside, a culture shifted, and the sentence that ended the room echoed long after he was gone. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. The applause faded into a calm hum,
The
the kind of
anomaly
silence
originated
that
here,
feels
in the
earned,
offshore
not
accounts.
imposed.
The transfers are
Malcolm
masked,
stood
but
just
the
beyond the
timeline matches
stage doors,
perfectly with the internal
the
security
echo of his
breach.
final words
The
still
future
hanging
we
in the air.
envision is not just a dream.
I didn't raise my
It is a
voice.
meticulously
I raised the
crafted
standard
plan.
for a long
A
moment. He
roadmap
didn't
to
move.
unprecedented
He just
growth.
stood there, letting the weight of what had happened settle where anger used to live. Justice doesn't roar, he thought. It lands, like truth returning home. Tessa appeared from the corridor, a half smile beneath tired eyes. "They're calling it historic," she said. Malcolm chuckled
I've
softly.
seen the numbers, Frank.
History's
They're a
just what people
disaster.
call moments they
That's not
didn't expect
possible.
to
I
survive.
checked them myself.
"You really think they'll change?" she asked. He glanced toward the doors leading back into the conference hall. They already did. You can't unhear dignity once it's spoken. They stepped into the
The
lobby
anomaly
together.
originated here, in
Outside,
the offshore
the
accounts.
building's
The
glass
transfers
facade
are
shimmered in
masked,
the
but the
afternoon
timeline
light.
matches perfectly with the
Transparent,
internal security
reflective,
breach.
The
honest.
future we envision is not
Reporters
just
waited
a dream.
behind a velvet rope,
It is a
flashes
meticulously
ready,
crafted
questions
plan.
rehearsed.
A roadmap
Malcolm
to
raised a hand,
unprecedented growth.
not to wave them off, but to calm the noise. "No statements today," he said. The statement was made. He moved toward the exit, and the crowd parted like a tide. Even those who had come for spectacle stayed silent. They didn't see a headline anymore. They saw consequence.
I've seen
Clara
the
caught up
numbers,
to him
Frank.
just
They're a
before he reached the
disaster.
car.
That's not possible.
"Malcolm," she
I
said,
checked them myself.
"you could have built an empire quietly. Why risk everything for one moment?" He met her eyes. "Because one moment can buy back generations of silence." Before we continue, where are you watching from?
The
Drop your
anomaly
city or
originated
country in
here,
the comments
in the offshore
below.
accounts.
And if you
The
believe
transfers are
justice
masked,
doesn't need
but the
volume,
timeline
just
matches
vision.
perfectly with the
Hit
internal
like and
security
subscribe.
breach.
These
The
stories
future we
exist because
envision is
dignity
not
is
just
still
a dream.
undefeated.
It
Now
is a
back to Malcolm.
meticulously
The car door
crafted
opened.
plan.
He
A
paused,
roadmap
looking at the
to
skyline.
unprecedented growth.
The same glass towers that once dismissed him as an outsider now mirrored his reflection across their steel veins. He smiled, faint but genuine. "Funny," he said quietly, "how the city looks different when it finally sees you back." Tessa leaned on the open door.
I've seen
"What
the
happens
numbers,
now?"
Frank. They're a disaster.
"Now," Malcolm said.
That's not
"We
possible.
build something cleaner.
I checked them myself.
Something quieter." She tilted her head. "And what do we call it?" He thought for a moment, then answered, "Legacy. Not mine, ours." The car pulled away, tires whispering against the asphalt.
The
Through the
anomaly
tinted
originated
glass, the
here,
company
in the
logo
offshore
gleamed
accounts.
above the
The
entrance.
transfers are masked,
No longer
but the
just a
timeline
brand,
matches perfectly with the
but a
internal
promise.
security
Read Equity
breach.
Holdings,
The
built on
future we
respect
envision
across the
is not
city.
just a dream.
People
It
replayed
is a
the speech, quoting his
meticulously crafted
lines,
plan.
arguing his
A
methods,
roadmap to
admiring his calm.
unprecedented growth.
Students dissected it in ethics classes. Employees shared it in team chats. And in small offices far from the skyscrapers, young professionals of color watched and whispered to themselves, "Maybe there's room for me after all." Malcolm didn't need to see the ripple. He already felt it. Every heartbeat in that boardroom, every silence he'd refused to fill, had become a rhythm the world could finally hear. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the black business card he used to carry as armor. Embossed name, title, phone number. He tore it clean in half and handed it to Tessa. Titles fade, he said, but character compounds. Outside, traffic moved in slow golden light. Inside the car, peace. Not the kind born from victory, but from completion. Malcolm closed his eyes, exhaling the last of the tension he'd carried for years. In the quiet that followed, even the city seemed to pause, as if acknowledging him, and when the car turned the final corner, disappearing into the glow of the skyline, the world wasn't clapping anymore. It was listening, because somewhere between silence and justice, a black CEO had reminded everyone that power doesn't shout. It stands.